The Lunar Club was created for spirit-first conversations that honor the divine feminine in us all. If you're craving more depth and authenticity in your life, then the Lunar Club can provide the medicine that you're looking for. My hope for you is to feel a little more loved and a little more connected every time you listen to one of these conversations. There's power in connection, there's power in our stories. Have fun and enjoy. Hi, everybody. Oh my goodness. We're back with Lunar Club Digital. It's such an honor. You are going to have to bear with us tonight because we're just learning how to really connect to you from this virtual digital space. I know it's not the same as being in our space, but it is time for us to reconnect. And it's been something that I've been feeling so deeply in my heart. I want to start off by, of course, acknowledging the land that we are broadcasting live to you from. This is the traditional territory of the Wendat, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, Métis, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We are always working towards reconciliation, truth and reconciliation. And so it's important that we acknowledge this traditional territory and that we are settlers on this land. Now, as typical lunar fashion, I am up here, but I am joined by an incredible, beautiful lady, and this is Asil. Asil has just joined our beautiful family here at Lunar Club and Conscious Economics, and she's going to teach us a thing or two tonight. So we are going to be co-hosting tonight here from beautiful downtown Toronto. And Asil, do you want to say hi to everyone?
Hi, I am extremely excited to be here sharing vulnerability and rawness and authenticity. These are things that we deeply cherish, but we also miss it in the midst of COVID. Connection is something that presented itself to be as valuable as ever. So I can't wait for a beautiful evening ahead of us.
Yes, and we have obviously an amazing surprise guest that's going to be joining us. But as always, we'd love to start our lunar gatherings with some live art, some live music. So I am so proud to introduce to you our official winner of our Artists for Social Change program that we launched earlier this year. Megan de Lima wowed fans with her incredible, beautiful songs, and she is going to be performing tonight for you 2 songs. And I ask that when you're listening to these songs, think about being connected to each other again. Think about being connected to us. Come into your body and into that space where we get ready to share and talk and connect. So I'm going to pass it over to Megan de Lima.
De Lima, and I'm going to play you a song called I Am Light by India Ari. When you hear the song, I want you to close your eyes, listen to the words, and at the end of the day, remember that we are all light. I am light, I am light. I am light, I am light. I'm not the thing my family did. I am not the voices in my head. I am not the pieces of the brokenness inside. I am light. I am light. I am light. I am light. And I am light. I am light. And I'm not the mistakes that I have made, or any of the things that cause me pain. I am not the pieces of the dreams I left behind. I am light, and I am light. 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 not the colors of my eyes. I am not the skin on the outside. I am not my age. I am not my race, my soul inside. I have light. I have light. I am light. I am light. And I am light. I am light. I am divinity defied. I am a god in the inside. I am a star, a piece of it all. I am light. This is my song called You Can. And it's about believing yourself, loving yourself, and staying true to who you are. You can move higher if you choose. It ain't gonna be a day to lose. Oh, you can be free, you can be proud. Trust and believe it right now. You can move higher if you choose. Ain't gonna be a day to lose. Oh, you can be free, you can be proud. Trust and believe it right now. Every day we face the same thing. How do I start? You know, how do I begin? Am I good enough? Should I risk it all? If my heart's wide open and I'm bound to follow. There's a fire deep inside. Sometimes it burns, times it hides. If you jump right in, if you let it out, then you'll find a way, no doubt. You can move higher if you choose. It ain't gonna be a day to lose. Oh, you can be free, you can be proud. Trust and believe it right now. You can move higher if you choose. Ain't gonna be a day to lose. Oh, you can be free, you can be proud. Trust and believe it right now. All the voices get into your head that you ain't ready to do this yet. Let me make this clear, baby, that's all bullshit. When you got one life, you choose how to live it. Oh, there's a fire deep inside. Sometimes it burns, sometimes it hides. If you jump right in, if you let it out, then you'll find a way, no doubt. You can move higher if you choose. It ain't gonna be a day to lose. Oh, you can be free, you can be proud. Trust and believe it right now. You can move higher if you choose. Ain't gonna be a day to lose. Oh, you can be free, you can be proud. Trust and believe it right now.
Space. So anyways, thank you so much to Megan for coming in and filming that. We really, really appreciate you. It definitely doesn't feel the same without everyone here, but we know you're with us. And so we are excited to announce our special guest for tonight. Now, the beauty of being, I guess, virtual, digital, is that we can have guests join us from all around the world. And so tonight, our incredible special guest is joining us from New York, and we are so honored to welcome Anita Kopak to the Lunar Club. Hi, Anita.
Hello.
Anita is, I don't even know how to describe Anita. I'm going to do my best job. So she is a spiritual psychologist, first and foremost. She is an advocate and an activist for pleasure. She is someone who has deep experience in working with women, healing trauma, allowing people to find that inner goddess within themselves. She's an award-winning writer and author, and her newest book, Shallow Waters, is coming out this August, this summer. I can't wait to talk about it. So exciting. She was the former editor-in-chief of Heart and Soul magazine, and so I want to talk to you a little bit about that transition that you made when you left there and decided to kind of take matters into your own hands. And it's just such an honor to have you. I've been such a fan for so long. I've been able to work with you myself. You're such an incredible healer. So welcome to Lunar Club, Anita. It's so great to have you.
It is such an honor. I was like in the backstage and I had to run out and get tissues because Megan had me crying back here already.
My goodness, I know.
Those songs were amazing.
I know. She's just such a light. We are so lucky to have her. And it's just such a strange time, isn't it? It really is to be in this spot now. I mean, I can remember just about almost a year ago to the date having our last live event in this space. And I really, truly was in denial, I think, for a long time, thinking that we were going to get to a spot where we were just going to be able to be back. And so I resisted doing the digital virtual gathering of Lunar Club because to me, I know like you, Anita, community is so important, and that energy that we get to, feel and feed off of when we're all together in the same space. So this is definitely a new space, but just having that music open things up and open that connection up, it really does make a difference. So I want to get right into it with you, Anita. And, the first thing that I really want to talk about is the fact that I really believe we are at this time of great awakening on the planet. And I want to ground that and anchor that in for people that are watching right now that may not really understand what I mean by that. In this past year, a lot of what has been in the shadow in our society has been coming to the light. So if we think about things like, the Black Lives Matter movement and really starting to see it for what it is, and for people to be able to recognize, and for us to start having this deeper collective conversation around justice and racism and the pieces that we cannot ignore that are not new because of this pandemic, but it's now a moment in time where there is this greater awakening where people are paying attention. We think about people paying attention to issues around climate and what's happening to Mother Earth. And, it's just this time where things that we were too busy perhaps to pay attention to are starting to come into the light. And when that happens, when we start to enlighten as a society, things are happening for us individually and personally as well. And I always say that where we find ourselves as we awaken, as we start to realize that there's a deeper purpose or meaning, that place where we find ourselves is where we do the work. And so I just want you to start off by sharing with our community your story of how you came to awaken to yourself and to what your purpose and mission was, especially around this sacred, sexual healing that you do. Where did this all start for you? And please share with us your story.
Absolutely. I love how you just said all of that. You put it perfectly into words, what is happening right now. Are you able to, can you hear me? Just want to make sure you can hear me.
Hold on, I can't hear you at all.
Okay.
Can you hear us?
Can you hear me, Asil?
I can't hear her.
Okay.
You can? I can't.
Okay.
Did they block out? Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we're good.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Bear
I'm
with
so
us. We
sorry.
got this.
Okay, awesome.
Let us
Okay.
hear your story. Yes.
Awesome. So I was just saying that how you just explained the awakening is so perfect. Thank you so much for doing that. Very clear. And I explain the process of being woke or awakening as a daily thing, right? It's kind of like how we have to brush our teeth every day. We have to wake up every day. But I would say my first awakening was when I was 18. And that was when I realized that I was able to see things and hear things that other people couldn't see and hear about themselves, about, other people. And so I started actually giving readings around that time. And that was a long time ago. I know. I look a little young. No, just kidding. But that was a long time ago. It was before it was, now there are a lot of people who are doing those type of things. Back in the day, there really wasn't. So I was kind of underground with it. But I was still doing it. I was doing readings. And as far as my awakening with healing my sexual traumas and moving into that space of working with people. I'm a spiritual psychologist, and I got my master's in spiritual psychology, and then I was working at Heart and Soul magazine, like you had said before, as the editor-in-chief for around 5 years. And during that time, in my private life, I was realizing that many times when my husband wanted to be intimate with me, I would get flashbacks of when I was molested when I was younger. And I was not feeling sexual. I was not into it. And I would actually want to run away from anything that had to do with that. And So basically what happened was I was just like, you know what, I need to deal with this because it looks like the rest of the world is having fun. It looks like they're having sex. It looks like it's a fun thing. It looks like people are out there doing their thing and I'm not on that train, right? And so I decided to do actually a documentary of my healing. I had done talk therapy before, talked about it, and it got me to a place of being able to talk about it because I wasn't able to talk about what happened to me for years and years and years into my adulthood. And so I was at a place that I could talk about it. But when I decided to do the documentary that's called Touched, I knew that I wanted to do this type of therapy where they would go through my body and find where I was holding the trauma in my body. And so that was a whole experience itself. And I can't remember now what your question was because I'm going and going.
No, that's perfect. I think it's so interesting that, you find yourself doing this particular work and you had that early trauma in your life. And it's, sometimes when we go through really difficult moments in time, and I don't want to smooth over any of those moments because it's incredibly difficult. And even you being able to so freely speak about this right now, that to me shows the work that you've been able to do because it's not so easy. But I do think that where we experience our deepest traumas are also where there is the deepest opportunity for growth. And that's, I think, definitely what you're proving now. I've listened to so much of, the work that you've been doing. I'm such a true fan, honestly. And one of the things that really resonated with me is that you said that you traded your pleasure for perfectionism. And as a woman, I really identify with that. And I think it's not just based in a sexual trauma. It's what this society has done to us. And a lot of us, I think, are trading our pleasure for perfectionism every single day. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to get into that, discovery for you and how that showed up in your life and what it meant to reclaim your pleasure. And yeah, tell us about that.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely true. I was basically, for everything, I needed to be perfect in order for me to feel like I was being accepted. And so what was happening was that I was working so hard. I was, even at the magazine, I wouldn't even let my assistants do anything because everything had to be perfect. And so I would do everything so it was perfect. And then I had no room for pleasure. While everything looked pleasurable, right, to the eye, because it would be perfect. So onlookers would think that, oh yes, that must be a pleasure-filled life. But it was, I didn't even know that I had traded that. It was something that I realized later on, because when I decided to put pleasure first and remember who I was as a woman, as a goddess, and healing that sexual trauma, because a part of that was that I didn't know how to receive pleasure. I didn't know how to open myself up to receive. And so once I was able to do that, I realized that I was so perfect because I was so insecure, right? I had to prove myself to people all the time. And now I'm like, fuck it. Like, I'm not sure, actually. Am I allowed to say that on here? I know you.
Oh, yes.
Be yourself around here. That's the whole point.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. But yeah, it's like, as soon as I was able to let go and let myself free, and I often say that I left my work as an editor-in-chief of the magazine to do sex work. But that was because I went and that's when I started working with women to, bring pleasure into their lives in so many different ways, running retreats. I used to have private clients, and that work was so beautiful to see people move through that space. Like it literally happens in real time. And while the awakening happens in real time, it's up to that person for the next day when they wake up to choose that again, right? Every day we've got to choose that.
I find it so interesting because, first of all, I don't know whether there's a link between you leaving that corporate kind of hustle of the magazine and editor-in-chief and then sort of having this opening and awakening and going deeper into the parts of you that needed to be healed. So I think we need to get into that for a second, because for me, and I know Seal, when we're thinking about, systemic change, when we're thinking about being able to show up in spaces and occupy those spaces as our full selves, and it may seem odd or strange that, we're a sort of a business community, but of the alternate sense, because these conversations actually do belong in these spaces, that we have to actually figure out how to connect with our whole selves. And for me, I feel like the society has, and everything, the media has sort of made me feel like sex or pleasure is not my own. Like it belongs to somebody else. It belongs to men. It belongs to, like, the way I'm supposed to look, the way I'm supposed to show up, all of those pieces. And I remember feeling, even in, my marriage, and I'm out of that marriage now, is a very, very hard decision for me to make. But I remember thinking, oh, I don't need to ever feel sex or pleasure again. Like, I'm fine. It's not even something I need. And it's because my nervous system was so revved up and wired up in this go, running companies, doing this, doing that you never had time to stop and even be in your body to realize your body was closed for biz, like not open. So what advice would you give to, and I know people are probably even resistant to this conversation right now. I know I would be. I'd be like, oh God, here we go. Like, I don't have, this is not it. But I really do believe it kind of starts in reclaiming this part of ourselves. So where do we start? Like, what is the starting place? And do you think there was a connection between leaving the system? And I know Heart and Soul was still a very vibrant, magazine that had a lot of alignment for you, but get into those pieces for us for a second.
Oh, I've never actually put two and two together in that way. So I love that you said that. It absolutely had something to do with it, but I've never actually thought about it. And so where do we start, right? Like that's a beautiful question, because if you do feel a resistance to pleasure, right? I've lived most of my life feeling like I didn't need it, like I needed to run away from it. It just brings pain for me personally on my journey of sexual healing. I was molested when I was younger. I had 3 kids right, like one after the other. And then I contracted herpes. And so all 3 of those things made it feel to me like, well, my kids are wonderful, but my body went through the traumatic things of birth and all that. But the kids are wonderful. They're here and they're great. But all of those things made it feel like sex brings pain. Sex brings pain. And that's what was happening in my body. So I wanted to just have nothing to do with it, go make my money, go do my career, and just like that perfectionist, right? And actually the other thing that brought me into the place of healing was that I brought my daughter in to have a dentist appointment when she was 7, and it was with a holistic dentist who actually went to the same master's program with me for spiritual psychology. So she knew my background, and I guess the way that she was examining my daughter, she just like looked at me and she's like, "Can we talk in the office?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she just was like, "Was your daughter sexually molested?" And I'm like, oh, my heart dropped. I'm like, I hope not. Like, why are you saying this? And then she was like, wait a minute, like, how old were you when it happened? And I was like, I was 7. She's like, how old is your daughter? I was like, she's 7. And she's like, oh, so she's actually just reliving your trauma. And I was like, hold up. Wait a minute. That's a thing? Like, she can relive what I've gone through. So she's feeling what I've gone through. And she was like, yes, in her spirit, if you don't heal it, you pass it on. Oh, that was a moment.
Wow.
That was a moment. I was like, okay, I need to heal this shit right now, because I'm not passing this on to my daughters. It never felt like it was so in my face as that moment. And so I thought that it just so happened that it, that it was while I was at the end of my heart and soul journey, but I did leave heart and soul, right? So it absolutely had something to do with it. And I jumped without a net. I didn't know what was happening next. I just knew that I couldn't be in that environment anymore.
Mm-hmm. I find it so interesting that a lot of the times, and I've spoken even to you about this, that there's this moment when we take this leap and we step out of what is what we're supposed to be, where we're supposed to be, all the, the perfect picture of you've got you're the editor-in-chief, you're making great money, you're at the top of your game, and then you feel this tug or this pull, and when you jump off that cliff, what kind of opens up for you? Like, I know you had a similar experience.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And I love that saying that goes, like, it's not even a saying, it's a question. Do you remember who you are before you were told who you're supposed to be? And in my story, like when I was turning 30, I was literally trying, like I started reflecting on my childhood and realizing that at that age I had so much like unconventional and unapologetic declaration of my purpose on this earth, and that it faded away with the years. And by 30, I realized I was born knowing who I am, and I was just trying to remember it, really. So it's really interesting to see you leaving something that you just didn't feel full alignment for, only to find that you've all along knew what you wanted to do. And when you turn your pain into purpose, you heal. So you found exactly that thought for yourself. Thank you for sharing, Anita. That's very powerful.
Yes.
Thank you.
So Anita, I mean, you've, and for anyone listening right now, I know that some of these topics can be triggering. And so please know, first of all, if you need any support after this conversation, you can absolutely reach out to us at Lunar Club, and you can just DM us and we will ensure that you get the support or the help that you need. It is a safe space for us to talk about these things. And I too, Anita, I'm a survivor as well. And when you started your Zero F's Given campaign, which we should talk about that a little bit, you asked me to participate in that. And that was even confronting for me, because that was at the early stages of me actually owning that I am a survivor, that I too have experienced sexual trauma in my life, and a similar age when this happened to me, so a very little girl. And it's something that was buried so deep within me, and that shame and that guilt. And when you speak, you're so empowered even in speaking about this right now. And I want to know, how did you get to that place where you were able to speak so freely about some of these pieces? I mean, even the herpes, like, that is not something that people feel comfortable talking about, but so many people face this, every single day. So how did you get to that space?
So it was a journey, like you're saying. I was not able to speak about it until I was in my 20s. That's when I finally told my mom, and then eventually I just was like, it was almost like it was clawing at my soul, and I was like, I have to let this out. And I don't know how. It was like right before the Me Too movement started, right? So it wasn't like people were out there saying what has happened to them. And I just went on my Facebook account. This was when Facebook was big, or maybe I guess it still is big. I don't know. But I went on my Facebook account and I just said it. I was like, this is what happened to me. And when I tell you, I mean, parents were coming up to me at the school and they were like, thank you so much for saying that. The same thing happened to me. And the amount of people that came up and said that and commented, and I was like, oh, there's something here. It is time right now for this to come out and up. And the more I said it, even though I did feel fear each time I would say it, there was like another little layer of fear, like, oh my gosh, there's more people that are going to know. There's more people that might judge. There's more people that are going to see this deep shame thing. But the more that I would say it, the more the shame would just be like totally dissipate. I was completely able to see what a farce shame is, right? And even as an adult, looking back at my 7-year-old little Anita, and how could you feel shame? This was not your fault, but that's one of the things that is so insidious about these type of experiences, because a lot of times it's by someone who you love deeply as a child, someone who you respect. And so then there's that whole, there's just so many different layers and nuances that are braided into the shame, right? And so speaking, that's such a beautiful practice for me, is to speak to that little girl, because then I can see it a little bit from the outside and really know, like, oh wow, I can't believe that I'm even feeling shame or guilt, right? Those were the two biggest feelings that were surrounding that experience. And so that was how I had decided to begin to speak about it. And then the Me Too movement happened, and I was like, oh, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. I'm like, and to me, it was a beautiful thing, because all of that was existing inside, right? It was existing inside, and it was like decaying on the, like that's what it felt like. And so then I decided, I was like, okay, well, what can I do? Because I was going into spaces, and most of the spaces that I was going in for healing, there, I would be the only person of color in there, the only Black woman in there. And I was like, I need to create a space for people of color to feel that they can step in and heal as well, or they can see someone who has gone through the same thing. And so, for 0F's Given, we help women of color and disenfranchised groups who have experienced that. So we help in different ways. I have different programs that we bring people into, and I also give money to the Center for Safety and Change, and they have safe houses and everything that they do, things that they do with the money.
That's beautiful. And for people who don't know about what 0F's Given is, so this is a campaign that you started, a global campaign that you started. Do you want to talk a little bit about what the meaning is behind 0F's Given?
Absolutely. I actually have one of my 0F's Given shirts on.
Wow.
And so,
I want to order that shirt.
Yes. And the money goes towards wonderful things. So if you want to order the shirt, it's actually on my, the link is on my Instagram, which is just my name, Anita Kopak. But 0F's Given is actually a day of that, giving 0Fs. So a day of sexual abstinence in honor of anyone who has ever felt any type of sexual violence. And so on this day, whoever decides to be a part of it, whoever takes the pledge, they pledge to not have sex on that day. And this is in honor of anyone who has ever felt this type of shame, violence. And the money goes towards, like I said before, programs that we do at 0F's Given, and also towards the Center for Safety and Change. And the Center for Safety and Change help women who have gone through domestic violence, rape, trafficking, and yeah. So that's what 0F's Given.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, I want to get into the conversation around just in this pandemic time, being able to actually connect to this pleasure in ourselves, because I gotta say, like, it's not the most exciting time. It just isn't. And I think a lot of us, either, those of us who don't have partners, I think are feeling really isolated in this time, which is really hard. So how do those who don't have a partner or a relationship right now connect to that pleasure during this time? And then for those of us who are in partnership, we're finding ourselves like constantly together. And it's difficult. And there's lots of layers of things that are going on, including lots of stress right now, just stress about safety and health, stress about work. We're in the middle of a she session. So that's not helping anything. This pandemic has definitely disproportionately affected women economically and physically. And, there's just so many layers to it. So what is your advice to to these groups in terms of how we can actually experience pleasure in this time of heightened stress and discomfort.
Yes. There are so many levels of stress right now. And if you've ever heard of that one saying that says, if you're too busy to meditate, that means you're supposed to meditate twice as much, right? It's the same type of of idea here. And you know, a lot of us will find ourselves in fight or flight mode right now, right? And that is actually one of the biggest reasons to drop into our pleasure, because when we're in our pleasure, we're in our senses. And there are many other ways other than sexual energy that can drop us into our pleasure. Like Asil said, find out what it is that you love to do as a child. You know, someone might love to paint and just they haven't picked up a paintbrush in 3 years. Whatever it is, find what that is, because you can start there, right? You could start bringing in one thing that brings you pleasure. And there are also other things, because what can happen is that we can find ourselves numb to our senses. And so if you do want to bring in self-pleasuring, you can do these things called feather light touches just to start off, because you might find that you are a bit numb. So it's just like really lightly touching your skin all over. And if you do feel a bit of numbness, just continue to do that, like looking at yourself in the mirror naked, and just feather light touches everywhere, right? And like just doing that all around your body, just bringing yourself into this present moment, because that's when you're in pleasure, and when you are feeling like sensuality in all of your senses, you are in the moment. And there are specific exercises that can bring you into the moment as well, you know, even just to get you to the place of feeling pleasure. You can look around and say exactly what you're seeing, you know, red sweatshirt, a white blanket, right? Like things that you're seeing right now in the moment can bring you present. And there's also, you know, for partners, I know that you're saying like a lot of people are on top of each other right now, and not in a good way. But there are tantric exercises, because one of the things that bring people together sexually in a dynamic way is when they have these oppositions, right? But you want healthy oppositions, right? When someone turns into your roommate, it's hard to have. It's hard to fuck them, right? Like it's hard to have like sexy like sex with them, because they become like your roommate, or you know, like your best friend, right? And so it's important to continue to create healthy opposition, right? Because opposites attract. And so the way to do that is concentrate on what it is within yourself that you love to do, right? And you know, sexual energy is connected to creativity, is connected to abundance, right? All of those things are the same, they come from the same energy. And so when you really decide to concentrate on yourself, and that doesn't mean you're not loving everyone else around you, right? You actually create a deeper sense of love for everyone else around you when you begin to love yourself, respect yourself, and do what you are here to do. You create a beautiful spaciousness between you and your partner, or just this I'm now talking about people who are in the house with someone. But yeah, that's a beautiful way of working with that.
It's so interesting because when we talk about, inviting abundance into our life, and we sort of see ourselves in this space of trying to really rethink how we show up within the system. And what I mean by that is in places of work, in places of, traditionally where you wouldn't be able to show up in this whole sort of abundant, creative way or self.
Mm-hmm.
And the money connection is really interesting because
Mm-hmm.
even for me, like the idea of receiving support from my partner for something, or receiving pleasure. And I kind of always feel like I have to be the giver of these things, not the receiver. And so it's actually interesting that even in my financial setup, I have that same similar patterning of like not wanting to receive, wanting to be the one that's always giving or gifting. So it's interesting that Anita says that there's that connection to the second chakra.
Absolutely.
Anita, can we talk to you a little bit about your relationship with money and how that all kind of fits in as well? Okay.
It's like the biggest taboo, like sex and money. That's what we're here to talk about.
Yeah.
They are, but I also want to mention something that really stood out for me, because most often when we speak about things that we can change in our environment and the relationship with people, some people may think that we're going to focus on the other, like what do we need to change outside? And what you just reminded us, it's all inner work. It's like when we really focus on that relationship with ourselves and find what makes us happy, it's going to naturally externalize and have that ripple effect to those things around us that we really want to change. So it's the same with money. So let's pivot into that topic, because it's such a interesting topic, and it's another one that COVID increased the stress around. So Anita, if I was to ask you, what would your relationship with money be? What would you say?
So I have a whole money story. So I would say it has been such a dynamic, changing relationship. And, my early life and my early career, I had an abundance of money around me. And when I was around my 30s, I had this moment. I had my oldest daughter in this preschool in the city that was crazy, like $50,000 a year. I don't know what it was. And I remember writing the check and then realizing, oh my gosh, I'm not going to have much more left after I write this, right? Like I just, it hit me. And I had never been I had never been at that point in my life, right? So basically what happened after that, I was pregnant with my second daughter. At that time, I was acting and modeling, but not because I just had 2 kids. And so I went from having an abundance of money to not having any. And I had to go to the food stamps office, and I had to get help. And it was like all of my judgments that I didn't even know that I had were coming up strong. Like I am a failure. I'm, all, the time where you would think I would need the money, right? Like, cause I have these children now that I have to feed. And it was just like, all of a sudden I was in this place of lack. And, I took this abundance course, and I won a meeting with the main coach. And the first thing she asked me was, how is my sex life? And I was like, oh, wait, isn't this about abundance? Right? she's like, yes, it is about abundance. How's your sex life? And I'm like, oh, and this is a time when, I just found out I had herpes. I'm running away from sex. Like it's the plague, right? Like it's just not good. Right. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, it's not really, it's not really good. Right. And she's like, and can you remember in your mind the last time you felt, abundance financially? And I'm like, yep. And she was like, how was your sex life then? And I'm like, yeah, it was pretty good, right? Like it was there, right? Like it was happening. And that was the first time I ever put those two things together. And I would say it took me a while to really work on it to, I had a whole journey that I had to go on. Cause I had my 3 children. I was figuring things out. I was, you know, like I said, I was on food stamps. I was struggling, and that, I would say, brought a whole nother dimension into my money story, right? While I had known that people have money issues, I had never actually felt them. And it's not a thing that, like, it's just, it's really interesting, like to think of people who are in a place of privilege their whole life. Like, no matter what you say to them, they cannot know what it feels like to have 17 cents and not be able to feed their kids, you know? And so that brought like a whole other dimension and fear, and I had to continue to do my work every day, because the falling down into lack and the climbing out, right? All of the things that we have to fight in our mind to climb out of the lack mentality, right? Is like every day, every day reminding myself that I am abundant, right? No matter what, that my bank account has nothing to do, like, with my worth, right? And so I like literally had to remind myself of that every day when I would wake up.
What's deeper than I am abundant is the I am worthy, because that's really the center point of it all. And when we have the ability, like, I remember, because I'm a therapist in training, and I remember my therapist told me, the problem in the world is not people's ability to give. Everyone can give. I can give love. I can give money. Everyone wants to give. It's people receiving. That's where the real issue is. Because when you're unable to receive, you're telling the universe, I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. And this is the center of like a lot of our individual problems and societal problems as they surface. So you were talking about that earlier, Ree, the connection you have with your sexuality and your money, and how these patterns reappear over and over again in different areas in our life. And that's really how energy works. Like, once we have a disconnect somewhere, it's inevitable for that disconnection to continue to show up in different areas. And I think this is an interesting thing for us to know. Like, once we're able to notice these patterns, it becomes inevitable to be addressed. Like, once you go to the root of it, then it's going to also have the ripple effect in all the areas when it's solved. So it works both ways. And I think, first of all, I also want to thank you for your vulnerability and rawness. These are not easy topics you're sharing it with us today. And there's certainly big areas that are surfacing for a lot of people as a result of COVID. So thank you for sharing your story, Anita.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you
so much. So, Asil, what do we do when we are trying to, like Anita's saying, she was calling in this abundance? And again, I want to anchor this and ground this down for people, because I know we always hear this thing like, well, money's just energy, and, you know, we need to have this abundant mindset. But on the sort of bricks and mortar, like, how do we uncover what is blocking us? Because it sounded like Anita went from a space of being okay to then all of a sudden you have, you know, an incident, and then you can't let go of that fear, you know. And I've had the same thing happen to me before. It was like I was calling in to rock bottom myself all the time, because I grew up in a household in a situation where it was kind of chaotic. So every time I had stability or balance underneath me financially or otherwise, I would do something else like risky to be back in that seesaw position that felt that was my normal. So what do we do?
I think one of the things that are important to note, I think, Anita, a lot of people would say, once I achieve this amount, then I will be happy. Or once I get this promotion, then I'll be happy. So happiness is always, in our minds, the consequence of achieving a certain milestone monetarily. What I started doing is started reversing this equation altogether, and said to myself, once I figure out how to be happy, the rest will follow. And you spoke about that earlier, but it's true, because I mean, I grew up in a war zone. I grew up in Lebanon, and Lebanon right now is a really terribly economically hit country. But I grew up around a lot of association with wealth is equal to corruption, because that's a very big story in the Middle East. It's a very big reality in that region. So I always feared wealth, because I kept hearing this association from my own dad, from my own community, that wealth is corruption and wealth is greed and wealth is selfishness. So I grew up wanting nothing to do with money, and thinking it's a noble thing to like refuse money. And we came to Canada. I came with a single mother. We were living on welfare. And I thought it's just like the noble thing about life. Struggle is part of life. Hustling is part of life. And these were things that were continuously reinforced by my environment. And I was surrounding myself with people who had more or less similar struggles. So for me, I look around, I'm like, okay, what I'm going through is normal. Up until I became a financial advisor, almost like in a sudden like twist of life. And I started walking to the bank with that financial card, like, I'm here to give people financial advice, and like my family is on welfare. And I had like this big imposter syndrome, like my heart would shake, and my whole body was like reacting every time I walk into the bank, because I couldn't believe that this was the position I'm in all of a sudden. And I started healing the stories and the patterns, and they are all universal. Like there's a big patterns about what money is or what money isn't, that somehow we were told, and we live accordingly. So I started examining these beliefs, and there's this thing called a confirmation bias. When you have these beliefs that you're operating from, you're going to go out there in the world and collect evidence to strengthen that belief to begin with. So, and that's the only evidence you'll be able to actually attract. So if you believe money is evil, then you're going to have lots of evidence to support that particular belief that you originally have. So what I started doing is actually reflecting about what are these beliefs I have about money. Now I'm in this position to advise people around them, and wanted to go and counter them, like wanted to purposely find things that started finding like rich people that I admire, rich people that I actually feel inspired by, to start like really shifting that angle that money is not necessarily evil, money is not necessarily corruption. And in healing, I started reading books around the energy of money, the soul of money, the art of money. I mean, you name it. Every book about money I probably read. And I made a commitment to buy a condo by the time I'm 30, because that was for me a proof that I'm walking the walk. And I was able to achieve that goal by 28, which for me was like the biggest milestone in my family. And I'm very, very incredibly happy, but I also recognize that it's only the first step towards a lifelong journey, because I continue to untangle more and more beliefs. Even though now I'm a financial therapist, every day I uncover new beliefs about what money is and what money isn't. And I notice my fear in spending money sometimes. Till this day, it still happens. I mean, and that's okay. I think it's just having that awareness that, okay, that's how I'm feeling. What does that mean? It means that I fear that money can't be replaced so easily. And then I can just uncover more and more and start shifting these things and continue to work on my happiness habits, this is like the biggest milestone for me.
Well, and these things that you're talking about are evident not just with money, it's with anything, right? So you have this confirmation bias that women can't be empowered sexually, and then you go out and you find evidence of that over and over and over again. So it comes down to this idea that we have so many programmed beliefs around everything, around stepping into our expression sexually, around stepping into our financial abundance, and again, we hold these things over us, and then we can't show up in the way that we want to show up in the world. And again, I kind of ask you, Anita, because I think so many of, the people within our community, a lot of them are, wanting to start their own business, wanting to start their own practice, wanting to take that leap, but scared because of the restriction around money. How will I replace that? How did your relationship with money change once you stepped out of being editor-in-chief and into creating your own practice?
Yeah, it's I'm so in love with both of you right now, because this conversation is just my heart. I can feel it expanding. It's so beautiful. And what I realized, I was just thinking as Asil was speaking, one of the biggest changes that has happened to me is whenever I spend money, I can feel it returning back to me tenfold. And whenever I spend like a large amount, I literally, I get my confirmation bias that it comes back to me that day. Like, and it's almost laughable now, because I'll be like, "Ooh, gosh, I gotta," like I'll feel the fear for a moment, and I'll be like, "Okay, I gotta spend this," but then I'm like, "Oh, but it's coming back to me," and then I see, an unexpected, payment coming in, and it's just like this beautiful. I'm trying to think of what changed within me, but I think it is the worthiness, because I know even when I was at Heart and Soul, there was still that piece of me that didn't feel worthy. And it wasn't until I decided to step away, that is when I stepped into my worth. That is when I stepped into my worth. And that's when I started to work with people individually. And, I just continue to be supported. I continue to have people come in who wanted to help. Like, there was a deep trust and knowing that I'm worthy. Like, that was huge, stepping into that space.
I think it's so challenging to feel that worthiness. Like I battle with this every single day still. It's a challenge. It's like some moments we have it and then other moments it's gone. It's kind of going back to what you said about awakening, that we have to choose to wake every day, because you can just keep falling back asleep. And especially when in our society right now, there's all of these messages around us that are constantly kind of reconfirming these different pieces. And one of the things that I've been so passionate about is when we talk about equity and we talk about equality and we talk about, new earth or new economy, is really being able to see folks that haven't had that generational wealth be able to step into a space where they can have that. But again, when we grow up in a situation, and I did myself too, where there was financial struggle, and there is a rhetoric that's built around that to make that acceptable to get through that. A lot of that is about seeing wealth or those that have it as greed and corrupt and all of these pieces. But then at the same time, when we want to invite freedom into our lives, when we want to break those chains of suffering, we have to kind of ask for that peace that we've made bad in our minds. And Anita, in the space of wellness and healing as a Black woman, stepping into that space and understanding that, you know, there are ancestral traumas that we're dealing with in terms of being able to course correct and actually see, you know, generations of, you know, Black women be wealthy and abundant and all. Like, these are the things that we want to see. That's the hope and the prospect of the new economy. But how do you kind of reconcile those two things, and how do you reconcile being in a space of wellness and healing, and then also have that solid relationship with money and like the third dimensional stuff that we deal with? Yes.
Oh, good question. You're diving in, girl. You are diving in. So it's to me, right? Like, now where I am right now, it's all it has all come together in one space, right? Like wellness, money, Black woman, right? Like, I'm in this one space, and it is harmonious, right? But this, I feel like 2020 was a godsend. I know that everyone has had so many different experiences with it. I've actually personally experienced a lot of loss in my family, and I've had a lot of friends pass away during this time. So while that was very intense, the you know, the Black Lives Matter movement was a godsend for me, because my whole life I've been feeling this way, right? My whole, like, anytime I would hear about some violence, you know, my kids would find me on the floor crying, because I'd be like, no, you know, like nobody cares. Nobody cares that cops are killing Black people all the time. And it was like, nobody cares. Nobody would hear me. I would be crying. It's like these tears of the Black mothers, because I have, you know, you know, at first I was scared for my son, but I also have two daughters, where now we see it, you know, it happens to everyone. And so I just kept getting more and more fearful. And so when all of a sudden it seemed like everyone saw it, and everyone was waking up to it, and the whole world was supporting, there was just this huge sense of gratitude, right? Like, huge sense of gratitude that people are even seeing it, because it was like, to me, it felt like it's been in our face this whole time, and nobody is seeing it. And so what I feel like now, what has been really beautiful, is that so many people are offering payment, right, for advice, payment for different things that before they would ask women to do for free, Black women to do for free. A lot of times, like, there's so much free work, so much free labor that we've done. I'm not talking about slavery, I'm talking about now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so that change, and it's, you know, it's happening on both sides, where it's like, oh, people realize, like, oh, you know, like, I am asking to pick someone's brain, and that's actually something that people get paid for, right? Like, you know, if you want to learn how to run a magazine, you know, and you want to pick my brain, pay me my $500 an hour, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's how much you know, that's how much I charge. And it kind of evened out the playing field, not evened out, let's erase that part. It's not totally evened out, but it it brought it to a place where there was more comfort in saying how we feel, saying what our needs are, knowing that we're being seen, and that we're being heard, right?
Mm.
And so, yeah.
Well, and I again, just seeing the correlation or the connection. And it's interesting because, again, this speaks to sort of this collective awakening, because as we start to see that happening around us, we can step into our power where we can actually demand our value, and we start to be able to see that show up. And again, when I kind of reconnect these ideas, it's hard sometimes when you are first asking for payment for something, or you're first, trying to set that standard. It comes down to that worthiness. But I come back to, can you ask for what you want in the bedroom? Can you ask for what you want in the boardroom? Can you ask for what you want, when you're doing a financial transaction? Because these things are actually all connected. So every time that we go out and we are like in a space of, feeling unworthy, feeling pulled back, it shows up in multiple places. It's not just in one spot you're good and then you're fine in all of these other places. Like, they're actually all interconnected. So when we see more, Black women being paid for their labor, or being paid for their talents, or being, respected for the incredible value that they bring, being able to see that on the collective, we can start to actually, it's the same as the Me Too movement, like you said. All of a sudden now it's like we have this collective movement, or this collective shelter around us, where we're like, yes, okay, like if we say it all together, then there's strength in that. And I think that that's such an interesting part of what's happening right now, whether it be economically, whether it be from a social justice perspective. It's just so interesting to see. Anita, what was your family's relationship to A, sex, and B, money? Like, what kind of household did you grow up in? Was it repressed? Was it open? Like, how do you become this person that you are here? And where does that come from?
Yeah. So, it's interesting because my mom grew up in St. Kitts, and my dad grew up in Poland, and they both did not have a lot of money growing up. But by the time I was born, they were making quite a bit of money. And so it wasn't like a freedom in money, right? Because they still had, the mentality that they grew up with. But at the same time, I was kind of presented with a freedom, right? Like, because I could pretty much get whatever I wanted. But then there was that underlying thing that was like, but we have to be careful because, we could lose it all at any time, right? Which then did happen, right? Like, it was I totally wrote that story for myself. And then as far as sexuality, my mom was very open with sharing everything. And also she was always asking if anything had ever happened to me. So I think she intuitively knew that something happened, because she would ask me and I would always lie, right? I remember that because it's very hard for me to lie. And I remember like that feeling like of getting all sweaty and having to lie to my mom because I didn't want her to look at me differently, as far as the molestation. And so it's interesting because we all have our own stories, right? That we grow up with, and two children could be raised in the same household and get a completely different story of what's going on. And so it really has to do with what it is we came here to learn. And I know for me, I had to understand all of the different nuances of lack, abundance, worthiness, just to be where I am today.
So you've just written a book, And I'm sure I can't even imagine. I know you've written multiple books, but this one is really, really exciting. And I'm sure you're going through all of these feelings as you get ready to release that book and calling in that abundance. And, I know it's going to be so successful. I know it's already gone to #1 in pre-sales on Amazon. Can you tell us a little bit about your book, what readers can expect? And yes.
Absolutely. Thank you for mentioning her. This is Shallow Waters. And it is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, different places. And so Shallow Waters is actually a historical fiction, and it is about a Black mermaid named Yemaya. And Yemaya is an actual goddess from the Nigeria region, the Yoruba people. There was a goddess named Yemaya who was a Black mermaid. And what I did was I imagined her life before she knew she was a goddess. And it takes place in the early 1800s between Africa and the New World. And so she's, it has the idea of the mermaid story where the mermaid falls in love with, a fisherman. But that's kind of where the normal mermaid story ends, right? Because then the fisherman is taken on the Middle Passage to the New World, and she has her own Middle Passage underwater. And she has to cocoon for 40 days and 40 nights. So basically, she loses him, and she has to navigate this new world in a place where her skin color makes her a slave. And you just see all of these amazing experiences that she goes through, trying to find him and trying to find herself.
I can't wait.
It's so beautiful. Now, I know we have our community listening, and so what we're going to try to do is for anyone who wants to come onto the virtual stage and ask some questions, all you have to do is click the StreamYard link that's in the YouTube chat, and you can come up and actually have a bit of a conversation with all of us here. So for anyone who wants to do that, I recommend that you can do that now. And in the meantime, we'll continue chatting. So we do want to chat a little bit about just what's happening with, while we give people a second to come on up, just to chat a little bit about what's happening with Lunar Club. Because again, we've been, hosting and holding this sacred community now for 2 years, and we are transitioning into what is going to be, the new iteration of this organization and club. And we want to introduce everyone who's watching right now to our membership opportunity to join the Lunar Club. And so what that's really all about for us is about being able to create this collective sacred community where we can come together and have raw, open, honest conversations, but also support our community in healing, particularly around the economy. So if you want to just move to the next slide, and I'm just going to skip through. One of the things that we've been saying is, if you want to go quickly, go it alone. If you want to go far, go it together. And we really are, anchored in building this community. And this is something that we want to do that is so important. So I'm going to move to the next slide. So why join? We are awakening. And again, we've been talking about, Anita, I know you know this, that now on the planet, there is this frequency that is available now that maybe hasn't always been available before. And it really is the awakening of that, divine mother frequency that's coming back onto the planet. And at this point right now, we really want to be able to collectively come together, us women, to be able to stand in our truth and stand in our power. And if we go to the next slide, so the first benefit will be that we will be doing these digital events with our special surprise speakers, continuing to connect our community, get raw, get unconventional. If you want to talk about the next piece. Yes.
The next benefit, actually. So given my background as a financial therapist, one of the things I'll be offering is monthly economic healing workshops. And this is a space to really examine and heal your relationship with money. We all have a bunch of different barriers. And my goal is to simply provide experiential experiences in which you can bring more awareness to what's really happening, so that you can overcome these barriers and address how you feel and think about money, because that ultimately changes how you behave and create the long sustainable things you're trying to achieve. So I'm really looking forward to delivering those.
Yes. And so if we go to the next benefit, we are going to be putting out our monthly exclusive newsletter to members. And again, this is a place where you can be featured. So we want to be able to share. What I loved about Lunar Club was that so many of the people that were coming out were actually creating partnerships. We're creating businesses together. We're doing things together. And so again, we want to be able to create that opportunity to connect digitally. And if we go to the next benefit, we are launching a really special interchange as well. So in this interchange, you will be able to advertise to our community, amongst our community, about, if you're offering healing, if you're offering different things within your business, we'll be able to coach you in order to be able to create that space. And we always love to be able to connect people that are, thinking in that same way. Mm-hmm. If you want to be starting your own business and you need a graphic designer, why not, hire another awake woman within the Lunar Club to be able to do that and to create that sacred community. And the last piece, last benefit is obviously we're going to be doing our weekly podcast, where we're going to continue to bring you up to speed with the most relevant topics right now in terms of being able to create basically a new economic system that's really honoring the divine feminine, that frequency, and being able to show that there is another way to do business. There is another way to talk about money. There is another way to talk amongst each other, and it doesn't have to be what we've always seen before. Mm-hmm. And we want to be able to bring that in.
But there's also more benefits, and it's really important for us that you tell the world about this movement that we're talking about, and really celebrate it with your friends. So you will be able to bring guests to our monthly events. At least one guest a month, you'll be able to have access for them, whether it's clients you want to show appreciation to, or your friends that you want to bring along. This always will be available for you as an option. Mm-hmm. Along with so the next slide is being the change that you actually want to see. So I think it takes a lot of courage to start asking questions. And while we don't have all the answers figured out yet, we know that the system as it stands right now simply just doesn't serve us anymore. And we need new ways to integrate our femininity, to indigenize the economy, to create the new work space for us to show up the way we feel aligned with ourselves. So we want to create that new economy, and we want to be able to do that with a powerhouse of women who also are asking new questions to old problems, really. Mm-hmm. So this is another benefit, is being part of this movement and figuring out these answers with us.
Yeah. So lastly, obviously our Lunar Surprise Box, which I know some of you amazing members that signed up this week got a personal delivery from me this weekend. I drove all around the city delivering some lunar swag to some of our longtime supporters. So thank you to everyone in the community who's coming back out digitally. We're really trying to figure this out, and it's weird. It's definitely different. Like, I have to keep putting this earpiece in to hear Anita, and not because we're still figuring it out, but it is what it is. And again, for us, we put a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of love into what we design and what we curate. We always have, and we have for years. And as our business changes, as our business, evolves, we want to be able to have that reciprocal relationship and that exchange. So the last piece is our annual fee for our sort of member benefit is $333 annually. So we make it extremely accessible for everyone who's going to be joining right now. We're giving a special discount of $111 off. So it's $222 for the year, and this is under $1 a day to support this movement, and for us to be able to we're going to figure it out and make something really, really special and great for those that are joining. So thank you to everyone for listening to that. Anyone who's joined us today will get a special link so that they can find out more if they want to get involved and join the movement in that way and become a member. And in the meantime, I do have one question that's actually coming through through YouTube on here. So I'm going to ask it to you, Anita. So this is coming from Lorraine, and she said, I love to hear how you manage to keep the spice and pleasure in your relationship with 3 children in a lockdown and COVID. So what is going on over there? What is happening?
I love that question, Lorraine. So how have I kept the spice? So one thing that's huge for me that was a bit different from before. So before is almost as if my sex was on a schedule, right? Like I would be like, oh, I know for sure I'm 3 times a week, you know, like that's what's going to happen, right? Just to make sure we're healthy, right? Thinking that that's, you know, the perfect thing to do. So what has changed for me is that I do it when I'm feeling it, right? If I'm not feeling it, I say no, right? And I've released all of the guilt. Sometimes I'll have a little guilt, but most of the time.
What if you're not ever feeling it?
Yeah, that's a different thing. That's a different thing for sure. That is, you know, when you go on your journey for your healing, because if you're never feeling it, right, then there's definitely an issue there, and good to go on a healing journey. But you know, we go through our ebbs and flows. We're, you know, women sometimes are feeling it, sometimes we're not. And so when we're feeling it, right, like, and oh, I'm just getting hot thinking about it. So that actually helped me, like, to have those boundaries, and that doesn't mean that I'm, you know, I might not be feeling it, and then, you know, my partner tries something and all of a sudden I'm feeling it, right? Like that's totally fine, right? But if I'm really not feeling it, it's like a no. And then there's an energy buildup, right? And in Tantra, another beautiful thing in Tantra is that energy buildup is it, you know, you can send that energy to your creative endeavors, right? So if you don't have sex, you can actually send it to this, which I'm sure, Estelle, I'm sure you read about the sex transmutation in the what is that old book about money? Oh, dang. Why can't I
What
think
is
of
this sex transmutation with money? I need to be taught that right now.
Sex transmutation is why can't I think of the book of, oh my gosh, I can't believe I can't think of the
Well, you
name.
have to send it to us because I'm not sure it's ringing bell here. I'm sure if I read that, I would be.
I'm sure you read it, because
I'm like, wait, I haven't heard of that either. It's a lifelong learning journey, like I said.
You know what? As I'm talking about it, I'm going to look it up because you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about once I say
Sure.
who
but
it
there's
is.
Something also I feel that's important to mention here is to remember how to feel and practice compassion with ourselves. Like I remember I moved in with my boyfriend at the time, and now he's my fiance, right at the start of COVID, like actually end of February 2020 is when we moved in. It's like we moved in and the world locked the door on us. And the beginning was hard. I just couldn't, I mean, I was very stressed. I was very anxious, and I just couldn't feel sexy. And I was feeling a lot of guilt around that. And I remember starting these conversations with him, like, is this happening? Like, what is happening to us? Like, this is we're supposed to be in the honeymoon phase right now. And he was really interested in reminding me that we're in the middle of a global pandemic. Like, who said we need to have sex 3 times a week? Where did these numbers even come from? Like, he started challenging these concepts because I was having such a down, like, is this like the end of my sex life? And it was so awesome. It was just a reality.
Yeah.
I'm like, I bought all this like stuff and haven't touched it. So I was just like really having a hard time.
He said, what an
I'm curious what you bought. I feel like a big tub of things.
What an awesome partner you have. What
for
an
sure.
awesome
He's
partner.
awoke. He's awoke for
It's
sure.
very
Yeah.
beautiful to have that conversation. So the book I'm thinking of is Think and Grow Rich.
Oh, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon.
Yes,
Okay.
Napoleon
course.
Hill, and he has a whole chapter on sex
Napoleon Hill, of
transmutation.
course. Yes, yes.
So,
Now it
so
rings a bell.
what does that mean?
So sex transmutation is the energy. So sexual energy is one of the strongest energies in the world, right? It can make people do crazy things if they're not in tune with what that what that energy is, or it can make them do amazing things. It is basically the energy, he says, that can bring your work into the level of genius, right? And so instead of always acting out on all of your sexual impulses, it is using that energy, right, to put it towards your creative endeavors, to be full of that energy when you go in for a meeting, right? So you have this energy all within you, and you're letting it out, and people are attracted to it. So it's using sexual energy in other ways. And he was saying it's a little bit easier as you grow older to use that energy in that way, because when you're younger, you think, oh, you feel it, I gotta go let it out, right? Like that's what he was saying. And as you grow older, you realize, oh, you don't always have to let it out when you're feeling it. It can go towards something else. You can use that energy towards something else. And if you haven't read, the people who are here, if you haven't read Think and Grow Rich, that's a great,
Of course.
Well, now that there's a chapter about that,
Yeah.
I'm definitely getting it.
I completely missed it and forgot about it. I grew up in a culture where I wasn't even supposed to think or even touch the topic of sex. So for me, it's sometimes weird to even mention these topics up, but it's very important to integrate them.
I know. You're like, what? I don't remember that chapter.
It's like one of the biggest sins, apparently.
Oh my goodness. I just love that, like, here you come marching in here. Now I put you on YouTube in front of your family talking.
Just don't show, anyway. I'll tell you who not to show later.
Okay, no problem. I know we have a special question from one of our guests. Are we bringing that guest? Yeah. Okay, amazing. Hi!
Same as me.
Hi, same as me.
Hey everyone. It's an honor to meet you, Anita, and I just wanted to thank you guys all for your vulnerability, because it's so important to share. I have a couple questions. Oh, and I'll tell you, Anita, I'm a singer, songwriter, rapper, producer. I was just a part of Conscious Economics Artists for Social Change. I was in the top 10, and that's how I met these amazing women. And it's actually
talented you are.
Oh,
Yes.
thank you. So it's actually perfect because I have two questions. One of them is, I also grew up in a culture that Asil knows this, that is very, very, suppressive towards women and suppressive towards sexuality. So I'm at a point in my life right now where it's like, I'm wondering how to truly find out who I am versus what societal pressure has put on me as a woman. Because I'm already super open, just me being an artist, a female artist, and open with like saying what's on my mind. I feel like I'm already there, but I feel like now I'm at a point where there's like two people and I want to be that one person, but then I have this other like traditional like thing. And so
I hear you.
How do I kind of break through and know I'm making the decisions that I want to make for myself versus ones that have been made for me and ingrained in me?
Yeah. I mean, when I feel into your energy, just, that's something that I do. I first will ask you, can I feel into your energy?
Yes. Please.
Okay. So as I feel into it, you know exactly what that is. And you always have. There's a part of you that is so strong in your knowing, right? And that part of you is it's if I think of it in like I'm seeing something, it's like there's this part of you that is like a pillar, right? That knows, that knows. But then there's all these little things around that are like the voices, the things that you've heard maybe from your family, from society, like all these little things, but they pale in comparison to the light that comes out when you're standing in your pillar. And so what's going to eventually happen is that you're just going to be standing in that energy of your pillar. And as you move into these spaces where people are sharing authentically, eventually you're just going to be like, yo, those other words are just not authentic. They're just not going to come out. And, you know, I do understand like having like family members that won't understand, like, there's a lot of family members that are questioning what's going on with me right now, right? And so it's, you know, it's either you live under the judgments of family, right? Of cultural, of society, or you step into that place that feels, I mean, you know, as an artist, you feel that flow, you feel that connection, right? And eventually you're just going to move towards that as you create community around you that sees you as that, right? Mm-hmm. Like as you speak, that's all I'm seeing is that this huge pillar of light, right? And so it's like, I know you have these questions, but when I feel into, and some people truly have these questions, but when I feel into you, it's not a question, like, you know.
Yeah, you're crazy. Like, you're crazy good. You're crazy good. I know. It's, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Sometimes when we're not ready to act, even when we know, we present our doubt in the form of a question. It's just how it shows up. But honestly, living your truth is not just a privilege, it's a responsibility, I believe. And we just have to own it.
Thank you so much. I have one more, I think, easier question. I just want to know how to ask. So right now I have a team member on my team, and I'm trying to grow it obviously bigger. But this one team member, he believes in me and he's like amazing. But I feel like I want more from him and I don't know how to ask it without also, I guess is she still there? She kind of. Where did she go? Yeah. But everyone can answer.
Still here.
Yeah. Okay. So hopefully she'll come back. But how to ask of certain things that I want more of. I know he's like open and he'll help more, but I guess that fear of asking of like what I want.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Anita, same as me, was just talking about this team member of hers and not knowing how to ask for what she wants. Sorry, maybe you want to repeat that.
Just to like, he's great and I know he'll be open, but I don't know how to ask how I want more. I want him to be involved more. He's so open to me as an artist and believes in everything I do. And so I take charge, but I would like him to take charge. And I don't know how to really ask that. And I don't want to put pressure either because he's helping as much as he can. So how do you ask for what you want in a way that's not going to get someone to like, be like, oh, like have a backlash kind of?
Oh, I think it's an amazing question. And Rhiannon said something earlier about how, you know, what we ask for in the bedroom, what we ask for in the boardroom, what we ask for. Like,
I wrote that.
Yeah, right. It's all the same. It's all in that throat chakra. And you just ask, right? The answer is either going to be yes or no. And so getting clear on what it is, right? Like, if you feel like he has the capacity to lead you, you can be like, listen, I would love for you to step into that part of you, because if, you know, men love to lead, right? Or some men love to lead, right? And so depending on what kind of man it is, like man he is, but if you ask him to connect to that part of him and like, you know, I would love to be led a bit, like, what do you see me doing? What, you know, like, even if at first it's a bit of a collaboration, right? And then you say, take it away. Like, you know, call these places that you see me performing, or what streaming, you know, devices do you see me on, and ask for it.
Right. Okay.
Where do you feel like the block is?
There's some sort of miscommunication that I think because my whole life I have to take charge, and no one has done yet for me in my career, what I've done for myself, that I think there's a miscommunication that like I want to be in charge and I want to be an independent artist, and I want to do, when I'm like, no, please, I need help. I just appear that way because no one's done it for me. So I think, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes the honesty is the best way to go about it. But I love that you're bringing this up, because this is so a part of the sickness, I think, of our society or system at large right now, is this idea that, I don't know if I'm frozen or if I'm still being heard.
Everyone's frozen.
Okay, we're coming back. Yeah, we're good. Okay, I'm just gonna keep chatting.
You're good. Yeah, I can.
But this is kind of the issue, is that we get into this particular space where, and I don't know if you were hearing me, but we get into this space where it's like we feel like we have to do everything on our own. It's the perfectionism in some way. We feel like we have to do everything on our own, because ultimately what's underneath that is this lack of trust that somebody will show up for us, or somebody will be able to see our value beyond us doing it ourselves. And I know it shows up even, you know, in a lot of relationships and households and marriages and everywhere else, where it's like, oh, I just have to do it because I'm the only one who knows how to do it right. And I can't delegate this to anyone because they won't be able to do it the way I need it. And in the end, we end up tired, exhausted, resentful. We can't receive. So it's like, where else can we not receive? So if you're stepping into this space where you've done it and you've had to do it, like, I know your story and I know how much you've gone through in order to, you know, cultivate your music and cultivate your craft and put everything into that. But there has to be this opportunity when you know that you've cultivated that, and it's okay to let somebody else or something else come in and help carry that you deserve that you don't not deserve, and that you have to always be the one that's pushing. And that's kind of the change between the feminine frequency of actually drawing that in, as opposed to like going out and like hunting it for ourselves. Yeah, which is so interesting.
Okay. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate
you
so much.
So nice to see you.
You too. Yeah. Okay.
We encourage anybody who has any questions or comments to click on the link and join us in this conversation. Like you've seen, we've all been getting raw and figuratively naked with you. So
yeah, for sure. And I am mindful also of the time. So maybe we should start to wrap things up a little bit. I know we've just been learning this whole system. I mean, constantly, when you see like a black screen, like the circle of death or whatever it is, you don't know if anyone's here or listening or not. But
no,
Anita, it's
no
been
one
such
can hear us.
No. Okay. All right.
Can you hear me?
Wait for it.
Oh, something is wrong. We're booted out.
Oh, I still see you.
Don't forget to mention investees.
Yeah. Okay.
I still hear you. Can you not hear me?
Okay.
No, we need to try.
Oh, shit. Oh, we're.
Bear with us.
Well, we have to get that back because I need to be able to see. Anyways, Anita, I hope that you're still there.
Yes.
have no idea. I can't even really. Okay, all right.
Our team is assuring us that you're seeing us, even though we don't know that.
We don't know,
so we're
and
gonna
we can't see
take their word
so,
for it.
Yeah, we will. But I think it's been such a pleasure, honestly, connecting with you, Anita, and being able to have this conversation. It feels so squeamish sometimes to be able to step into a space and start talking about some of these things. And I know it's completely radical to think that there's a connection between this conversation between sex and pleasure and money and business and systemic change. But they actually do really correlate and intersect, which is just so interesting to be able to know and to see. And so it's been such a pleasure. And for those of you that haven't already done so, I do encourage you to look up Anita on Instagram. She's very, very active there, Anita Kopak, and we'll put that in the chat as well. And her book that's coming out in a few months, so it's going to be released in August, which is really, really nice. We also want to thank our partner of the Lunar Club, RBC Investees. And again, for everyone who's watching today, we really want to see a new level of empowerment within our community, especially around the way that we show up at work, the way we show up in our relationships, and the way we show up with our relationship with money. And so if you're like me, the world of investing can sometimes be overwhelming, and it's hard to be able to find the right person to manage your money. And I know so many women just aren't there. They're not doing it. And so we want to be able to support that. So RBC Investees is waiving their management fee for 1 year for all of our members. We'll send you out that link as well. It's an incredible platform where you can have your portfolio managed by RBC Investees professionals. You can start off with a minimum of $100. So it's a very low entry point, and you can have a professionally managed portfolio. It takes all of the work and the hassle of you needing to do all of that yourself. And it's a real turnkey opportunity to start investing. So we do definitely recommend it. I can't see you, Anita, so I don't know. I don't know if you're there or not. She's there. Okay, so I'll ask you a question.
Can you hear me?
To end off, Anita, if you could leave us with one piece of advice to kind of embody and incorporate some of the conversation that we've had tonight, what would that be?
Okay, I hope you can hear me. If you can't, hopefully the audience can. So my one piece of advice that I would love to leave with everyone is for everyone to take a moment to drop in and really find what it is within their soul that they want to do. What you want to share with the world, what you want your legacy to be. Thinking in, do you feel like you know what your purpose is? And just checking in with yourself and being gentle with yourself. And that's it.
Okay. Thank you so much, Anita, for that. And thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight. It's been such an honor connecting with you. We will link all of your fabulous things in our letter that we push out to everyone who joined us tonight after, and of course in the chat. And thank you to everyone out there in the universe who came and who, we're learning. Yes. So thank you so much for being with us. It's an honor, and we will see you back next month on the full moon. So we'll talk to you soon. Thank you, everyone.
Stay well.